Hello, how's it going? Papa John, back for another video. With the red light on, at night. It's very dark out there. It was a full moon a couple of days ago, but the clouds are very ominous. And I felt like getting a little bit creepy today. I was just playing Silent Hill 2. And it got me thinking, I'm in Brookhaven Hospital. And it reminded me of my own personal Silent Hill. A very profound moment in my life, which I'll never forget. And I still dream about to this day. I mean, we're talking almost 10 years ago now. Kings Park Psychiatric Center in Kings Park, Long Island, New York. So for a while, I was living in Long Island with my ex-wife, who technically is still my wife, but we are separated and we're still in good contact. But that's not the topic of the video. We were living there, and it's where she was born. And she told me when we were moving there, so we lived in Manhattan, and we were moving out to Long Island for a while. And she said, in my hometown, there's a giant psychiatric center. Now, I just figured it'd be one building. It turned out to be an entire town, originally from the 1800s, and decommissioned or out of business, whatever the end of the psychiatric center is, in the late 90s. And it is just being left completely abandoned. It was always funny because I'm from Yorkshire, England, which is the most haunted place, I believe, in the world. Where I'm from in Yorkshire, Leeds, there's so many ghosts and so many weird things going on there. There's a guy who walks around the shopping centre screaming like a werewolf.
My name is Gino, aka the Wolfman.
One of the many interesting things about Leeds, UK. So it was kind of funny that I was from the old school horror, ghosts, spirits. It also has a very high percentage of UFOs, spottings. And my former wife was from a more modern sci-fi horror. Long Island, New York had not one but 4 psychiatric centres. Most of them have gone, apart from there's still remnants of Kings Park there. It also had Tesla's laboratory, and it was the birthplace of the Manhattan Project. Also, there's a theory that Hitler's last living relatives live there and have refused to have children, so the bloodline dies with them. So we both had different versions of horror in our lives. But going back to this psychiatric centre, one thing she told me when we moved there is, I don't want you breaking in. One of the pastimes for the youth of Kings Park would be to break into the psychiatric centre, at least one of the many buildings. We even watched an interesting video of a teacher at the school that she went to saying to it was on the local news saying, do not go into this building, because kids would. My former brother-in-law was a fire chief, and he was telling me that the amount of people they've had to rescue from this place that have got themselves accidentally locked in or fallen. Anyway, being the idiot that I am, one day I broke in. I managed to find a window that was open, and I was a little bit fitter in those days. Your Papa John was 15 years younger, so I was able to shimmy up a tree and climb through a window. And I've never felt anything like it. I broke into the women's section, so where they kept the female patients. And I got to the 3rd floor. And I remember looking around. There were still pictures on the wall. I actually took 2. My brother-in-law threw them away, but I really wish I'd kept them. There was one about the ballet, it said Ballet Paris, and the other one had hibiscus flowers on it. Beautiful posters. And I remember my wife saying, can you imagine who's been staring at them photos, John? Them pictures, John? Do we need the energy in the room, in our house? Anyway, one point when I was on the 3rd floor, I was walking around and I started to hear this creaking sound from the floor, like floorboards creaking. And I went around the corner and the entire corridor had collapsed right down to the ground floor, and it had a huge tree growing up. Awesome how it looked, just coming in and out of walls, just this like beautiful tree. However, as I was standing there looking down, so it must have been about 30 feet drop right to the bottom from the 3rd floor, the floor started to creak and started to give way, and it started to collapse underneath my feet. Luckily, I managed to step back before I was laying face down on the ground floor, trying to find my mobile so I can call my brother-in-law to come rescue me. But that moment of just walking, I mean, imagine it, you're walking around the building and you go around the corner through a corridor and you look down and the entire corridor's gone. And then it starts to collapse when you're standing there. I still dream about that. I have a recurring dream where I'm in a building and the floor is starting to give way. It's strange because I always think that I'm living there, like I'm with a bunch of people and they're like, oh, we can live here. Like squatters, you know what I'm saying? And they're like, oh, we can live here if we want. And I always think to myself, yeah, it'd be kind of cool to live in an abandoned building. Very similar to London. A lot of like people I knew lived in abandoned buildings in London. So I think to myself, oh, it would be so cool. But as I'm talking to the people, I can see spots where you're not supposed to stand. And they say, don't stand here because the floor will give way. So you have to constantly watch where you're walking in this building I have in my dreams. But the most scariest moment is a few days later. So I got out, I got lost, and I couldn't find my way to the window that I got through. And I was petrified for 20 minutes. I was running around the ground floor of this building. Every door I opened, or at least every door I forced opened, it would lead into the courtyard, which was completely full of trees. Thorn bushes with giant needle-like thorns, and also poison ivy, which is deadly. It really was like playing Silent Hill. That's why I just thought of this memory, just playing it now. But I managed to find a window and get out. But a few days later I went back during the day and I found another entrance. A lot easier to get into this one. So I climbed in onto the ground floor and I was in the morgue. The morgue of a psychiatric center. And I remember standing there looking at the, like, what do you call them, like the containers where they put the unfortunate people that didn't make it. And I remember standing there and it was a beautiful summer's day, the birds singing, you know, really idyllic scene. And this wind came from nowhere. I swear on my eyes, this wind came from nowhere. Oh my god, what the hell? Wow, dramatic. So this wind came from nowhere and blew through the morgue, and my bones were like ice. My skin tingled. Felt like it was on fire. I was like, wow. I ran out of that building so quickly and never came back. So there you go. Kings Park Psychiatric Center started as a farm in the 1800s to help patients rehabilitate themselves. Closed in the 90s. They just let everybody out. Those that didn't have family lived on the streets or went to Manhattan. And anybody who spent any time in Manhattan knows the problem with these things. There was a area of the psychiatric center which was covered in wisteria. One of my favorite flowers. this beautiful wisteria all over this building. It was called Wisteria House, but the people that worked there called it Hysteria House, because that's where they kept the patients with the most problems, the violent patients. And my wife told me a story about a former teacher at her school that was in there for cannibalism. Oh well. Hope everybody has a good night after that. I think I've just terrified myself. Maybe I need a nice lavender tea and Final Fantasy VII after that. Thank you everybody. All the best and keep watching. And I'm getting very deep into Silent Hill now. Maybe I'll play it tonight, I don't know. After that, I'm not sure. Alright, all the best.